Okay, I think we can begin. So, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining our discussion panel. My name is Justin Lestel, and I'm the Marketing Manager at DevSkiller. DevSkiller is the leading technical screening platform that services companies in over 65 countries worldwide. I'm very excited to welcome you to our first ever Talent in Tech discussion called Demystifying DevOps Recruitment. It's certainly no secret that DevOps is one of the most highly sought after skill sets that companies are searching for. In this discussion, we'll be exploring a number of topics and DevOps recruitment trends that are shaping the industry as we know it today. Now, before I introduce our panelists, I've got a couple of housekeeping things to go over. First of all, we want this to be as interactive as possible, so we strongly encourage you to leave your questions or comments, and we'll get to them throughout the session. We've also got some time saved at the end for a Q&A session. This session is also going to be recorded, so if you can't make it to the end, we'll send you an email next week with the recording link. Okay, so I'd like to pass it over to Thomas Koleva. He's going to be today's moderator, who can introduce himself and our all-star lineup of speakers. So, Thomas, over to you.
Hi, thanks, Justin. Hi, I'm Thomas, and thank you all for coming. I'm head of cloud infrastructure at DevSkiller and the practitioner of DevOps principles since almost the beginning of my career. I also have a great pleasure to be the host of this webinar, and I'm very excited to welcome our panelists. To be honest, when we got the final confirmation from all of them and I saw the lineup for the first time, I was so thrilled that we managed to gather such an amazing team of DevOps experts. So let me welcome Rosemary, Tiffany, and James. So can you please tell us something more about yourself? Can we start maybe with Rosemary? Rosemary, can you tell us something more about yourself? Can you introduce yourself?
Of course. Thank you, everyone, for having me. I'm Rosemary Wong. I'm currently a developer advocate at HashiCorp. HashiCorp writes a number of open source tools, including Terraform Vault, and I won't name all of them, but I have a background in infrastructure engineering. I love doing it. I really enjoy it. And sometimes I branch into the application development space. Sometimes I branch into the security space. It's all very interesting to me. And I've had a very fascinating DevOps journey, starting from operations in a data center and now to more of the development side. And it's been truly humbling to transform with the industry.
Thank you, Rosemary. So maybe now it's time for Tiffany.
Yeah, thanks so much for hosting the space. My name is Tiffany Jakcha. I'm currently an engineering manager at Vox Media, and I really fell into DevOps when I started my career in professional services at Red Hat, developing applications on OpenShift and Kubernetes. So I come from the cloud native space. Since then, I've transitioned into more of digital transformation roles, so leading big transformations and shifts in culture and processes to be able to help teams deliver their work a lot faster. And now as an engineering manager, I do that work at Vox. So I'm super excited to be here with you all today.
Thank you, Tiffany. And finally, James.
Hi, everybody. My name is James Fryman. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I often tell people I am an IT security practitioner, got scared away to infrastructure. Too many years of doing PCI compliance reports. I was looking for something new, and man, I heard about this DevOps thing and said, I think I want to try that. And thankfully I made a pivot, and I've been doing anything and everything to like remove friction from people's lives for over a decade now. I love it. I'm excited to be here to talk about it. And thanks for having me.
Actually, it's good that you mentioned your beginning, at least your beginning of your story, because I have the first question for you. So, James, how did you become interested in DevOps? Because you mentioned that you have some transitions along the way. How did you become interested?
I got super lucky. I work with a group of folks here in Nashville, Tennessee, who happened to be sort of on the cutting edge of DevOps. I don't know how they did it, but they were. And from this heritage came Puppet. Luke Kanice used to live here. He built it here before he moved up to Portland. And so I sort of fell in with that community. And when I was looking for a career shift, it was actually the tool Puppet that got me started. I know we talk about, DevOps is more than tools, but that's how I started. I got a hold of Puppet and I went from being just a guy who knew a little bit about Linux to I'm a super admin on all the platforms because of how it's been modeled and set up. And that just stuck with me, like how much that captured knowledge could help make me better. I was like, man, I have to pay it forward. And that's really what got me into it. And from there, the rabbit hole starts, right? It's more than tooling. You learn about the people and the process, but the spirit's the same, is empowering people. And I certainly have Puppet the tool to thank for it.
Puppet, I'm not sure if all of you know what Puppet is, because right now we have this new thing like Kubernetes containers, but Puppet back in the day was something really exciting. You had the power, you have the power to control all of your hosts. That was very exciting. And maybe, how about you, Rosemary? How about you? How did you become interested in DevOps?
I studied networking, which the network touches everything. Everybody blames it on the network, sort of joke. But I think I fell into it because an organization I was working for wanted to move into the container space. And they were like, you need to know more about cloud and you need to know more about containers. And I was like, I don't know anything about this container thing. I don't know anything about public cloud, really. And since then, I have continued down the rabbit hole of DevOps and DevOps related tools and frameworks and skills. So for me, it was a venture into dangerous territory, almost like automation for the network was shocking and a little scary, but it was so much fun that I stayed in it.
So once again, it's like having a real power over your network devices. Okay. Yeah. This is kind of very interesting power. Okay. And Tiffany, how about you? How did you become interested in that?
Yeah. I see so much of myself in James and Rosemary's stories because, that was really the start of it for me, was being able to see the measurable impact that I would have being on these projects and really advocating for DevOps practices and tools and processes. So I really fell into it, I think, when I first started consulting, because I got to kind of help in so many different areas, not just software engineering, but also like, how do you structure your work? How do you begin to automate things? What happens when you start to make these automation processes that you can't keep up with, right? So that's kind of how I started. And then I was lucky to have a lot of mentors and people who suggested different DevOps resources to me. I actually have the book that kind of got everything started, and it's the DevOps handbooks that's sitting here.
I have it somewhere hidden over here as well.
Yeah. And I think when I read that, that's when everything started to click. And I was like, wow, like the work that we do on a regular basis, like this is how you can actually tie in all these pieces and make them have a big impact. And so once I started doing that and being like diving deeper into the work, I got hooked on it, and that's like carried me through my career now. And I continue to bring that into my role, into various roles today, wherever I happen to be.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So maybe it's not about power, but rather a big impact that we have as DevOps people, that we have over machines and people, because we are providing infrastructure and platform for many, many people. Yeah, that's really great. That's really great conclusion. Okay, so because we're meeting here to discuss also some things related to this scarcity of DevOps people. So there's a lot of talk about the DevOps talent shortage. So what are the reasons, in your opinion, behind the scarcity? Rosemary, what is your opinion? Why there are so few DevOps people?
It's very funny because every time I've gone to Grace Hopper celebration, for example, and there's a mixture of those who are entry level trying to figure out what their interest in technology might look like. And then there are folks who are in the industry, maybe they're looking to change specialization. There's a lot of reasons why someone would go. And every time I've gone and sat down at a table and talked to folks there, I've always gotten the question, what is DevOps? I see like the descriptions and the jobs, and I'm still confused because I see 3 different job descriptions and all of them have 3 different things. And I think that DevOps talent, or the skills that you would need to become a part of an organization that's on a DevOps journey, is very different depending on where that organization is, historically, what tools, what cloud, what data center they're using. I think that there's a technology dependency when we talk about talent in the DevOps space. We see you must have Kubernetes knowledge, you must have container knowledge, you must have security knowledge, and it's very overwhelming. And I do think that the talent shortage isn't necessarily an industry shortage as much as just we may not be very clear on the things we need out of DevOps talent. And it's so different depending on where the organization is in their journey, who and what they're using, platforms, et cetera, as well as the expectations of what they're trying to achieve from a business standpoint. We make it very difficult for ourselves in some way. So I think it might be kind of self-imposed, but that's part of the problem. A lot of people are very intimidated by the skill sets that they are looking on this list that they need to have. And in reality, none of us have all those skills.
Well, many companies wish that DevOps people will fix anything. Basically, we need to hire some DevOps people, and everything will be solved. All of our problems in our organization. Do you agree, guys, James and Tiffany? That how about your opinion behind this scarcity?
Yeah, I'll jump in here and say 100%. There's some organizations that aren't clear on the outcomes, and they just expect if you were to hire XYZ person with, X amount of experiences and these tool stacks, that things are just going to end up being okay, right? And I think that's also an important thing to get clear on is what kind of outcomes are you trying to achieve and how can this person actually help you? But in terms of the DevOps talent shortage, I really do agree with what Rosemary was saying around that. It's not as straightforward as it is as for other roles, right? For a front-end engineer role, it's not that hard to have a straightforward path to what do I need to learn, what do I need to have in my toolkit to be able to do well. In DevOps, there's so many big picture demands of being able to shift things organizationally, but also get specialized enough to be able to go into these lower levels of abstraction, right? Like networking and infrastructure. And these things aren't easy. That's not an easy thing to demand from someone. So I think it's just that combination of people who are used to focusing in areas in zones of genius, but now DevOps cuts across so many different parts of it that it's not a straightforward path into the space.
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Tiffany. Justin, I think it's...
Yes, I was actually going to jump in here. I'm going to launch a quick poll for our audience. It's going to shape up our next question. So question is DevOps really a culture or is it just a myth? So I'll give you guys the opportunity to submit your answers and I'll share them with you very shortly. Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, we've still got some
Can't
answers
wait
coming
to see
through.
the results.
Okay. Slowing down. Okay. Alrighty, I'm going to share the results. So, the majority of you, yes, are saying it's a mixture. It's a mixture of culture and technology. I think, Tomek, this might be a nice segue to our next question.
Yeah. Thanks. So, So, do you think that DevOps is a state of mind, or and the cultural you've seen the results and not just a job title? So, because you mentioned previously there is something special about this role when it comes to DevOps engineer, DevOps something. We have plenty of DevOps roles comparing to other IT roles. What is so special about DevOps compared to other IT roles? Is it all about this huge amount of technologies that DevOps people need to use, or it's about having different set of skills or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it is technology, right? I love to talk about the tech. I've given presentations on the tech, and it's the easy thing to talk about. But it's really is about the ethos and this idea of constant improvement. In my job, am I just going to do the thing to create the widget, or am I also going to optimize my widget creation, my neighbor's widget creation, the future widgets that could come out of this thing that I create. And it's not always necessarily able to be done at all levels of IT, but I feel like that's where the seeds begin, where you see something and you have the ability to fix it and you want to, and you either do it or you figure out how to get the job that does it. Right. And so I appreciate there's some jobs that just are straight support or straight dev just to deliver business demands. But I think that's where it starts, right? Like, what is that continual improvement in culture?
So does it mean that you have some kind of special skills to improve your culture, or?
It's a great question. And I say this with the job title of a DevOps person, right? Like my title is DevOps person, right? So I think the hard part then is the debate or convincing folks that what we're doing is the right thing to do, right? Like if you can't come to an engineer or an operator and say, hey, I'm going to make your life marginally better, they're not going to be on top of that. They're like, whatever, you're going to ask me to do X amount of work for only a fractional improvement of time? No. But if I come to them and say, look, I can make your 80% of your problems go away, and here's how we can partner to do that, that's really where I think the magic comes from. And I think it dovetails back into that previous question, is why is there a shortage, right? It's a lot of energy and effort to try to make that compelling argument, and not just to my peers, but up the stack, that it's worthwhile to spend time on the yak shave to make our pipeline go better, or to reduce the amount of errors that we're seeing in our environment, even though we're still delivering business value.
Yeah. Excellent. How about you, Rosemary or Tiffany? Do you want to add something? Yeah.
I can join. I can hop into the conversation. Yeah, I definitely agree with what James was saying. There is a mindset around DevOps. Just like there's in other IT roles a mindset around how you want to develop front-end applications or develop APIs, right? But I think the nuance here with the DevOps portion is like being able to look at that bigger picture architecture and say like, hey, we do need to have these investments, and this is how we're going to continuously improve. And this inevitably is like the lifeline for our applications and how we deliver. So I think it's always kind of looking back at that too. So I definitely think that, in terms of culture and mindset, that there is a mindset around it, and you do want to pick it up, especially for folks that are in these situations where they're in large organizations and they feel like, everyone's kind of moving at their own pace and they somehow have to steer the ship, right? So I definitely think it's something to think about.
Yeah. So we can say maybe that, by using proper processes and tools, we can drive innovation and create better culture. Maybe that's something we can come up as a conclusion for this. Yeah, that's great. Excellent. So let's jump to the next thing. So regarding, because you guys probably attended some interviews and then some recruitment processes. So what was your best and worst recruitment experience? Do you have any advice for companies looking to hire DevOps specialists? Because it's easy to scare them off. There are so few of them. It just, what can they do to make us happy, I would say. So Tiffany, because you have a huge experience in this field, can you tell us something more, what to do, how to help them?
Yeah, I'd love to share some of my insights. I think at the very least, if you're hiring for a DevOps specialist, at least ask what DevOps means to them. Right? I think that's like always a good place to start, in a conversation, because, if you're looking for someone very specific to do a very specific thing, like, for example, drive a digital transformation or drive this XYZ thing, you want to hear what someone thinks of DevOps. If they don't think it's a culture, if they think it's just the tooling, you may not get the outcomes that you're hoping to achieve, right? So I think it's like being able to find someone who's willing to go there, excited to talk about it too, because, it's just as the panelists were mentioning too, it takes a lot of energy to show up somewhere and make changes and steer an organization. So definitely think of it from that perspective. In terms of like bad and good recruitment experiences, I've had conversations, I've also seen folks go into interviews and they're not willing to answer questions. When we're talking about technology, they're like, well, I've been working XYZ in this industry for so long with these technologies. Why should I tell you like how to do this simple thing like building a Docker container? I think like it speaks to the kind of sometimes culture clash with this DevOps role, because if you're looking for someone very specific, you're looking for someone who's willing to get there. But you have these questions and someone's not willing to show up in that way, right? Then you obviously know that they're not a good candidate. So I think I wouldn't be too hung up on the talent shortage, more so like, see if this person is a good person to drive change. And maybe they don't necessarily know all the tools. Maybe they don't have all the right answers, but they're the type of person to be able to find the right answers. And, there's no hard rules about how you're supposed to do something or how you're supposed to do DevOps or how you're supposed to have a cloud strategy, right? I think it's always dependent on your organization and how you come to those right answers. So that's my tips there.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Tiffany. And James, maybe you can add something. Did you have any, very bad experience when applying, maybe in your earlier years of your career, or? Yeah,
I wouldn't even say it's in my earlier careers. I mean, just recently, my most recent example. It's very great to be in this field because everybody wants it. But I think to Tiffany's point, they don't know what it is that they want. I recently went through, I think it was 2 weeks worth of interviews, and interviews are very different now because we're in this, weird new world here. But over a span of 2 weeks, I think I interviewed with 8 different people, none of which knew what my job title would be, what I was going to do when I got there. 2 of these were coding interviews, and they were just like brutal panel. And by the time I got to the guy that I'd actually report to and asked him what I would do, there was still no answer, right? Like, I feel like, and I've made the mistake before, honestly, of going to a company that sort of, didn't have the answer, thinking that I'll be the person to show up and fix it, and that's the wrong approach just the same. If they don't know what they want and you don't know what they're doing, that's a bad mix, right? And so that's what I would suggest, right? Like when we talk about clear roles and responsibilities, there's things that you need to deliver, and then there's things that you need to change, right? And I think we're getting better with job titles like observability engineer or site reliability engineer or platform engineer. They're getting better, but it's still fuzzy. So that's what would be my recommendation, right? Like, it's clear as an employer, you know what you need for your team. And most folks that I know in this field are very interested in the purpose, autonomy, mastery piece of it. And so you just give them the piece that they can come master, and tell them how they can have the autonomy to help drive this change, because they're clearly wanting it. They're clearly looking for it. So that's what I would suggest. Try to find that bridge.
Yeah. So they were looking for some kind of magician rather than DevOps guy, or actually they didn't know what DevOps is. Maybe that was confusing for them as well. So yeah,
exactly.
That's very interesting. Okay, thank you so much. So let's move on. And what are the elements of the job offer that you believe are important for DevOps candidates? Is it money, tech stack, growth opportunities, I don't know, clear career paths, company culture, or maybe combination of all of them? Rosemary, you're laughing, so why don't we start with you?
I mean, I'm just going to be the one to just be very honest. Money, of course, is always going to be that factor, right?
Fire away.
Okay, here we are. So we're done, but it's very competitive right now. DevOps, if you have the skill sets, that a common set of skill sets that folks are looking for, it is very competitive, right? And you can negotiate salary. So you know what? We'll just put it out there. But I think if you look at some of the other factors, tech stack, growth opportunities, career paths, clear career paths and company culture, I think there's a question that I always ask my potential employers, but there's also a question that I tend to frame, to candidates as well, and that's, what outcomes are you trying to achieve, and how will you support me if I go into this role? And usually that's a really interesting indicator of whether or not me as a candidate will be set up to succeed in part of this DevOps space. because in DevOps in particular, if you do not have a company culture, or you don't have a subset or a small group of people within this company who are able to help you push for a very open-minded, continuously improving culture, you'll have a very difficult time in this role. And that leads to burnout, right? We see a lot of that right now, where you join a company, there may not be the culture you're looking for. You can't help change things about the tech stack. You can't help change things or grow or see yourself growing. And in which case, you know what? It's just not worth it to you anymore. And so you find a different opportunity. And I think culture right now, at least at this point in time, is becoming the more important factor. If you don't have a company that, as I pointed out, is open-minded, and as both Tiffany and James pointed out, if you don't have that mindset, a growth mindset in place, where you're willing to help this person or anybody on your DevOps teams, DevOps-oriented teams at least, succeed, someone is going to look for a different opportunity elsewhere, right? Tech stack, I see a lot of people do blog-driven career development as well. That was pre these times though, where they would read a blog and be like, oh, this is the most popular thing. I want the opportunity to learn it because there's a fear of missing out, and it makes me a more competitive candidate. So there's a combination of both, especially in DevOps, but I would say more than ever now, culture becomes one of the bigger drivers, because it's hard to be happy in a DevOps journey if you don't have buy-in from the executive level all the way down to the engineering level.
So it sounds to me like there has to be a match between what company can offer in terms of culture and what this particular DevOps candidate can offer. Like James mentioned, it cannot be the way that company doesn't know what they need. That's pretty interesting. So it's not about money, really. That's very interesting.
I think it's going to be a good opportunity to put this to the test, Tomek, and we can ask our audience what they think about this. It'll be interesting to see. So, what are the most important aspects of the job offer? And we'll give it some time again to let everybody.
Do they suggest any answers? So maybe I shouldn't tell that. So, sorry, just forget what I said.
It's a single choice poll. That's the tricky part.
You had to make. That was the conscious decision.
We want to have a clear winner, I guess.
Exactly. I got to tell you, it's very even though. We'll give it a couple more seconds.
Very even. Oh.
Yes. Okay, I think that might be everybody. So share the results, and it looks like salary has just said yes. Growth opportunities and company culture. So it is still the most important factor that everybody's thinking about.
Well, okay. Let's move on. Of course, it depends. But Rosemary chose HashiCorp. They have excellent tech stack. So and of course, culture as I heard.
You know what?
So, yeah.
It teach their own. I joined because of the culture, and there are always things wrong with the tech stack, and there's always things that you can improve. So I caveat to that. There are always things that I'm like, we should be improving it, and we try.
So last more thing from me. If you have great culture, then maybe it's just easier to build great products. But maybe that's just hypothesis, I guess. Okay, let's move on. So. Who can actually become a DevOps engineer? So is it only for people with an infrastructure background skills? Tiffany, can you say something more about it? Because you also have experience in hiring different people. And how about this?
Yeah. I think anyone can be a DevOps engineer. I think especially for the engineering specific things, because there's so many resources out there now. There's nothing stopping you from taking a certification or doing a Katacoda tutorial or digging deep at work and doing some of the stuff. Like, it just touches so many different things that there's nothing stopping you from just digging in. and I've seen people go from traditional data engineering roles or software engineering roles into SRE roles and do really, really well because they're passionate about this. Some of the ways that they learned very, very quickly was throwing themselves into the work specifically, and then, making that transition. It was just a matter of a job title change at that point. So there's a lot of different opportunities, I think, and it's definitely not limited to someone with an infrastructure background. It helps, I think, and obviously as you get deeper and deeper into the weeds of DevOps and that work itself, you're inevitably going to learn a lot of the networking skills and the infrastructure skills that you will need to succeed, inevitably, right? But I think to get started, like, there's nothing stopping you, and I definitely believe like anyone can be a DevOps engineer.
Yeah. And James, because you also have the infrastructure background like me. That's just coincidence, I would say. But do you agree that everyone can become a DevOps engineer, or not so much?
I definitely have a bias, so I'm going to say yes. But the best team that I have ever been a part of to date, I hope we can build some more of these, in the future. But they are from a diverse set of people, right? Developers, traditional admins, data analysts, network practitioners, right? Business analysts. All of these are pieces of the pie of a business that needs to get friction reduction, whatever that means for the team, for the company. And I have been challenged more by teams that have diverse backgrounds because they're thinking about different things and different concerns from their whatever core competency is. And so these are where I think about like T-shaped employees. That's what you really want. You want somebody who's like super wide as best as you can and has that interest in either becoming more wide, but also has are they really great at that? What is that T? And that's what they're going to bring to the table to the greater part of the team.
Yeah. Excellent. And Rosemary, how about you? Because I'm not sure if networking is an infrastructure or not, because it depends. And do you believe, or did you work with people who call themselves DevOps engineers, architects, and they are from non-infrastructure part of IT?
Definitely. Some of my favorite folks that I've worked with had no relevance to IT at all.
Okay.
Yeah, they were part of the business, and and they just sort of were interested in what's going on, and it mattered to them from a compliance view and from a functional view. They're call center agents, and it mattered to them, right? Because
call center agents became DevOps engineers.
In some ways, yes, because they had been, doing something. It mattered to them, right, from a business standpoint. Without saying too much, the technology mattered to them, right, because they're the ones on the phones. They're the ones making the calls. If the call drops, then it's a problem. If they can't complete a transaction, they don't get money in the bank at the end of the day. So it's in some ways, they were not official DevOps engineers. You can't, their job title never changed, but they became a really valuable, important engineer of sorts in telling all the other IT folks, here are the problems that we're experiencing. Here's how we fixed it, right? Doing manual things, doing like workarounds, things that could make our lives a little bit easier. And we don't know anything about code. We don't know anything about networking, but we know that when these things go down, we have to find some other alternative. And this is what we've done. And surprisingly, those alternatives provide a lot of insight into how someone works, how you can improve something, but ultimately how you design a system that makes sense for a business purpose. And in that way, that was like my favorite thing. I was like, they will become DevOps engineers, but kind of by extension. But I do believe that all of them could have probably picked up the technology, any technology, given the right kind of training and the right kind of team. They could have probably picked it up and done it themselves, just because they're sitting here with pretty complex call center systems, et cetera, and they're able to figure it out, right? So I do think that a lot of different folks can become DevOps engineers, not just from networking. I know a lot of folks who end up going into IT because they learn about DevOps as a culture or as a philosophy, and are interested in the implementation of it and genuinely trying to help an organization improve.
So it's closer to being a kind of person who likes to improve, or this famous automate all the things, sort of. Yeah, that's really interesting and really inspiring, to be honest. To become a DevOps person, to be promoted from a co-agent. That's exciting, at least. Excellent. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Yeah. So if many roles can be like converted to DevOps roles, or people can become DevOps engineers, so do you believe that reskilling is a good idea to fill the DevOps talent shortage? If yes, which groups of IT professionals would be able to gain the required skills in the shortest period of time? That's something that's really interesting. I don't know. Maybe James, do you have any opinion on that?
I mean,
can be risky. Yeah.
I love throwing developers on call. That usually changes the situation very quickly within a team, right? Because like I think you talked about it in the beginning, the natural bias to think of DevOps as an infrastructure thing, right? When developer is literally in the name. Right. And so what I like to do is find those partnerships with developers, because they're going to do two things. One, they're going to automate themselves out of the problems, right? The first time they get woken up at 2 a.m., they're going to fix it, right? And it's not to say that a traditional administrator couldn't, but they're going to find a different way and a more creative way to solve it, right? And then what they're also going to do is turn around and teach other people on the team how they did it, and also how to level up and upskill. I've never not seen it happen, right? You get hungry people with different skills, you smash them together. The developer is just part of that potion, right? Like making sure that you have somebody in the core of the DevOps part of that team. And if you're not, like, that's the first place to start.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. And Tiffany, how about you? Do you believe that developers can be quickly reskilled or to change to DevOps roles if they want, or maybe?
Yeah, I think the want is definitely the important part I'd focus on, right? Like, you don't want to overforce anyone to do something that they don't want to do. And, we talked about this DevOps role and how important it is to be passionate about it. But yeah, I love that kind of insights. That's kind of new, throwing a software engineer on call. And it's true, though. When you can relate to someone, when you can empathize with someone, you begin to think about, well, oh, this is what I actually need to be able to do to solve this problem. We naturally think about solving problems. There's a lot of engineers. I mean, even folks not in a traditional software engineering role, like even if you're just a mechanical engineer or electrical engineer, you learn how to solve problems. That's basically the foundations of it, right? So I think it wouldn't be too difficult to transition into a DevOps engineering role, or to go into cloud engineering and all the sorts if you're coming from that background. But yeah, again, like, think about, like, is this something that you actually want? And I know we also talked about like job offers and things like that, right? Like I always try to think of it from the perspective of like, will my actions align with my values if I were to take this job opportunity? Right. And I kind of look at it from different viewpoints, right, in terms of growth, and you can also look at leadership. But those are some things that you can think about if you are thinking of reskilling, because ultimately, again, like, no one can own your career except for you. So you ultimately make those decisions. And I always encourage people who are in their day-to-days and they want to mix things up, or they want to pick up a new card, a Jira card that has like new kinds of work, and for them to pick up new skills, to go and do that. Like, that's the autonomy aspect of it, right? I think from a leadership perspective, you just want to be able to ensure that there's a lot of structure around that, right? So if someone does fail, or if someone does run into an issue, that they can get the support that they need to be able to do it. But yeah, I definitely think that, if reskilling is something that you want to do, you are interested in DevOps, or you even think that you are, begin having conversations with people in the community, begin talking to your fellow DevOps engineer, someone who's already doing the work, and then you can bridge that gap.
Yeah. So to be honest, I met a few people that were that got just bored from working and constantly writing the PHP stuff, and they just DevOps people are so great, so admired. I want to become a one. So, and Rosemary, have you met any people that just converted from other roles?
Yeah, a number of them. So a lot of folks, when I was working with a team that was at least responsible for a cloud migration, right? A lot of the folks on my team came from application development. They were very, very, very proficient Java developers and very proficient C# developers. And they wanted to learn because they wanted to use all these awesome cloud offerings that were available to them. But they didn't have a good sense of what practices would help them scale necessarily. They wanted to do it right. They wanted to be secure. Because they're sort of like, we write a bunch of code, we run it through some static code analysis, and that for the most part is how we know it's secure. But it's pretty scary to hear the ramifications on your organization when there's something that hasn't gone well, right? And so they basically are like, we need you to help us learn and remove the fear factor of trying out this space, and trying to broaden the development approach. And actually, it was really great. I loved it. In fact, I loved it so much. I continue to ask for folks with more of a development background on my team and quite a bit of security background as well. I try to get a mix because it is something I learned, right? So I learned a lot about software testing applied to infrastructure from software development teams, right? And that's critical. Like, how do you think about that? How do you make sure you mitigate, potential failures in your system for both an application level as well as infrastructure level is really difficult to learn. And for me, I sincerely believe that it was probably better for folks who are not in operation, like a traditional operations mindset, going into DevOps, mostly because there's, I think in some ways, the things that we borrow from practices and processes come so much from the development space. In some ways, it's a lot easier to explain the theories behind DevOps coming from the development space than it is from operations. Not to say that there's a lot of folks that I've worked with, and some of my favorite folks were formerly sysadmins too. So it goes both ways.
Yeah. That's really inspiring to have, a mix of people, because we are different people. We are different. We have different traits, that's really inspiring to learn from each other. That's excellent. Thank you, Rosemary.
I was just thinking I might launch our last poll, Tomek, to ask our audience what they think about this.
Okay, let's give it a go.
Topic. So, last poll for everyone. Do you believe that reskilling is an effective way of dealing with the DevOps talent shortage? I think we're going to see a pretty resounding result on this one, but let's wait and see. And I also see that there's a few questions coming through the Q&A. So guys, we're getting close to that point. So if anyone's got some questions for our panelists, please add them in there and we'll get to them shortly. Okay, a couple more answers coming. Alrighty, share results.
Okay.
As we thought, yeah, pretty overwhelming for this one, I think.
Pretty overwhelming. Yeah, we have to come up with some solution. And let's jump into the next question then, because if we are talking about reskilling, maybe I will jump to James. What would you advise to people who would like to start their career in DevOps? This is really important. What are the personal traits that are required to become successful in DevOps?
Communication, inquisitive nature, and curiosity. And I know two of those are the same, but why I separate them is one of them is an internal and one of them is an external quality. The internal quality of like curiosity is continuing to try to find new ways. You're always looking for that in continual improvement. How are you going to do things? And then the other outward way is, how are you going to convince others that it's the right way? There's a lot of communications that go into being a good DevOps practitioner. I wouldn't lie and say that it wouldn't hurt to have like a home lab or some lab at work to start getting dirty with the tools, because I think that's part and parcel of knowing what to do. Like I have too many Kubernetes clusters in my closet to count at this point, but I don't think that's necessarily just the same, right? Like you need to have some way to flex your skills with tech. I love Tiffany's idea of like grabbing tickets where you can, or just being an advocate for another team. Like I've actually had some other folks come that way. It's like, hey, I'm interested in this. I don't know how to get over there. Can I spend 20 or 30% of my time with you? As a manager or a leader, I would cherish that. Like, please come over. I will do anything in my power to help you out and try to get you on this track, because you're doing nothing but helping everybody, right? Like you're helping us do the work. You're interested in it, and it's a transaction. So like, be curious, be inquisitive, figure out how to play and how to grow, and then just go for it.
Great. And Tiffany, are you looking for these specific traits in people, for example, for junior DevOps positions? Because you mentioned already some of them.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's great when you can communicate upwards, even if it's just as simple as asking a really good question. Those are great traits to have. Like when I'm looking at candidates, I'm thinking about like, will this person bring up a perspective that I don't know yet? Because as a leader too, you can't be expected to be in everything 100% all the time. That's micromanaging, and at the end of the day, I want to build a team where I trust the folks on that team to do their best work and for us to succeed. And it's that trust and building that culture around DevOps to ensure that you are getting it right. At the end of the day, even if it takes multiple failures, or even if it takes a long time, right? It's that progressive or growth mindset that I really enjoy. Also look for people who want to make it fun, who are excited. I think if you are trying to start your career in DevOps, like, have fun with it. This is exciting. This is a new space for you if it is. And, especially for people who are transitioning, just don't forget to have fun with it, because at the end of the day, whenever we work with technology, we just want to solve cool problems and like see that impact. No one wants to work on a code base that no one cares about, that doesn't get used, that isn't important, right? At the end of the day, that's why we care about DevOps. That's why we come into this space. So make sure to just remember to have fun with it.
Yeah, excellent. And Rosemary, if you went to kitchen, for example, of course, I'm not sure if you even if you even go to your office, but if you went to the kitchen and talk with some people, what kind of traits were you looking for to tell them, you know what, you'll be an excellent DevOps engineer? What would that be?
I would say, what's the last thing you learned and when? Yeah, because the cycle for learning is very, very small. You're always going to find something new every single day. I learned something new today, as of 2 hours ago too. So that if someone is able to think of that very quickly, and it doesn't matter if it's technical or not, that's someone who is picking up the skill and acknowledging that, yes, this is something I'm learning, and I will learn it, and I will become someone who will hopefully teach it to someone else. The other thing that I try to look for is folks who are not necessarily instructing someone, but teaching, right? Showing things that they try and say, okay, these are things that I like to do, and maybe this will help you. I think a lot of what we've done as an industry that I think benefits more people going into DevOps now is being open about it. We work out loud with open source, where we get to examine code, figure out how someone else did it, maybe refine it and do it better, and that actually helps everyone. And so I think that those are really the main ones. I don't necessarily look as much for technical, or if someone is able to chop up salary. I don't, who knows what, but there are some foundational things that maybe I would be like, oh, this is helpful to know, but those are the first things I look for: learning and teaching.
Okay. Thank you, Rosemary. Okay, so we are approaching the end of our webinar, but I have final last question that I just want to ask you guys. So if you can sum up in a few words, how do you see DevOps career paths progressing in the next 2 or 3 years? Because it's it's a very, very interesting topic, but how do you expect it to be progressing? I'm not sure which of you want to start. James, because you're unmuted.
I'll go.
Okay.
I'll go. Yeah. I think it's again, like, specific careers are going to start to come up. We're going to get better refinement with that. Like I said earlier, platform engineer, DevOps, tooling, I think is going to be an interesting one, right? Because, like, I think there's going to be 2 classes of folks that come out of this. There's going to be folks that build tools for the practitioners, and then there's going to be folks that use the tools to go execute on. And I think that'll be kind of an interesting shakeout. And then this DevSecOps thing, like, I jam more acronyms into there. I don't care. The more the merrier. But I see that being interesting too, right? As we start to get to zero trust, like, what does that actually look like in practice? And I see that converging into the space just the same.
Yeah. Thank you. DevSecOps is a really interesting topic. But okay, Tiffany, how about you? How do you see DevOps in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, very similar to James. I think with the career paths, I think there's just going to be more adoption of different types of roles, whether it's in a product team or delivery team, or it's like within a more centralized pattern, right, within an organization. So it's gonna shake out in different ways, I think, too, and it's gonna give people the opportunity to specialize deeper into a particular area of DevOps, whether it's bringing DevOps practices to machine learning or data or wherever it happens to be. So I think we're gonna begin to see that shake out into different types of teams as well, and then kind of similar to how we've seen a lot of adoption in agile practices spread out towards other industries. I mean, not just tech industries, right? We see different teams, like marketing teams, using agile practices. Where I think we're going to start to see parts of DevOps in other industries as well. So that's going to be the fun part of it too.
Okay. Thank you. We have only a few minutes. Rosemary, do you want to add something to this?
Nah, I think James and Tiffany pretty much covered the 2 that I was going to mention: security, data, and ML. Yeah, some specialization, and then we're going to start seeing it expand into other domains.
So, do you expect to expect a new role, DevOps network engineer, to appear in some?
There's already net DevOps, and I think that it all falls under DevOps, and we'll see those lines blur, right? We'll see automation blur a lot of the lines that we thought we couldn't necessarily cross.
Okay. Thank you. That was the last question. I'm not sure, Justin, what's the plan now?
Well, we have a couple of questions in Q&A, so I'm thinking, because we're running out of time, we might try and do like quick fire responses, and we'll direct it to one of you guys and see if you can sum it up so we can get to everybody. So I might start with James. Our first question here is, what is the main difference between a junior and senior DevOps engineer?
Time and typing, right? Like, the mindset is the same, right? It's just, have you seen a problem before or not? And are you paired with somebody who has? When you get to that point of exploration, I just think it's literally time and typing. They're the same.
Okay. That was short and sweet, so thank you. I think this might be a good one for you, Tiffany. Where are DevOps and related roles such as SRE and platform engineers looking for new opportunities? i.e., where should I announce my DevOps roles? I know that you have some experience in hiring, so.
Yeah, definitely reach out to different communities. So there's a lot of really great ones, including the DevOps Institute. They have a Slack channel. I would try to go into the various Slack communities too, because that's where most people have job boards and you can post about them. Also, like, there's nothing like organic networking too. That's where I find most of the folks that I really enjoy working with. I just think of someone who I really had a good time working with, and I pass over the job posting and I'm like, hey, like, in case you know someone, like, feel free to recommend them. So there's a lot of really great opportunities. For myself too, I have started doing more audio rooms, so like Clubhouse rooms, and there's like a lot of really great communities there and a lot of folks who are just super, super talented, love talking about this stuff, and are looking for opportunities. You never know.
Awesome. Okay. So I guess we've got Rosemary. You're on the clock. So do you think that the common understanding that DevOps is a job role, not a culture, is making the whole situation worse? Is it a reason that HR is looking for magicians who can do everything? This one's a bit of a double-winded one, so you need some more time
I
to
mean,
get to this one.
the short
sweet.
answer. Yeah, the short answer is yes, but I don't think there's a good way around it, right? The job role is a way to provide structure. It's a way to provide, there's a benefit to it, right? The job role is there so that as an industry, we can assess whether we have some kind of pay equity or some kind of general standard on the career level of what DevOps engineering would mean. I think we are in some ways making it worse because they are not consistent. So no matter how much we try to level the playing field, so to speak, by offering such a job role, we don't 100% get it right. It is very difficult, right, to measure the number of or evaluate for the number of soft skills you would need. And so it's not going to be about the magicians who can do everything. The magicians have to start asking the question, what do they want me to do? And what magic tricks are the most important and the most helpful?
Okay. Well, thank you. I have two more. I think we've got time. So I'll open this one to anyone. So anyone wants to jump in, go for it. Tomek, you included if you'd like to jump on this one.
Really?
Do you think it's more important? Do you think it's more important for the person that wants to become, for example, an SRE to have the right mindset or hard skills? I know that one was a bit of a...
I think it's
I can
mindset.
say that mindset. That's it.
Yeah.
Mindset. Okay, short and sweet. Okay, and this is our very last question. Do you believe Phoenix Project changed the view on DevOps globally, outside of it as well?
I'm not sure if everyone know what the Phoenix Project is. It's a famous book.
You could explain it, I guess. Yeah, we've got time.
It's a book. It's a very famous book that covers. I guess it's a novel. You can say it's a novel.
Yeah.
It's a DevOps novel, something like that. And what was the question? Change the view on.
Sure. I think it did. Right. Like I remember having conversations with folks when it came out, and I was surprised by the emotional reactions that folks had reading that book. Like I remember talking to a colleague that said there was a point in mid-book, he literally threw it across the room. He was so frustrated. And it wasn't that he was frustrated at the book. It said it so closely mirrored what his life was going through at the time. Right. And I just was like, I was struck by that. It gave, I think, at least for me and my colleagues, it made it clear that this wasn't an isolated problem to my org or even my team, that this is a big problem. And it gave us language to start talking about it with other people, right? Whether they read the book or not, we now had vernacular we could go and start having the conversation. So I thought it was immensely valuable. And the handbook that came out after that, super awesome, just the same. All both written by Gene Kim. I don't know if we mentioned that, but if you haven't read them, read them. Don't be afraid to throw the book. Just, absorb it and take what you can from it and go on.
And I can add something to it, because it's really exciting that the book is not only for technical people, it's for business people or anyone who wants to improve something. And it's a novel that's really exciting to read as a just regular novel. That's exciting, and we learn much more by reading stories, and stories is that's something that is important. Okay, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I guess we're right on time, guys. So thank you all very much, first of all, to our panelists for
thank you, guys.
Discussion.
That was awesome.
Yes, and thank you to everyone who took part. I mentioned earlier that we'll be sending you guys a recording of this webinar, so look out for it early next week. We're actually hosting our second Talent in Tech discussion called The State of DevOps Recruitment on November 18th at the exact same time today, so wherever you are in the world. This time we'll be looking at DevOps recruitment from the perspective of employers and recruiters, so slightly different look at it this time around. We've got a great lineup of speakers already taking part. So look out for an invitation to register next week. Once again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tomek. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, James. Thank you, Rosemary. And thank you, all of you, for joining. And hope to see you guys in 2 weeks' time for our next discussion. So thanks, guys.
Thanks.
See you later. Bye-bye.